everyone. Watch till the end of the video for a surprise. I'll see you there. Story by you/JustCurious811. This happened 7 years ago while I was living in a small town in Illinois. My youngest was a few weeks old, so I was up frequently to feed him. So I slept downstairs with him while my husband and older 2 children slept upstairs. I was woken up to someone knocking on the door. I was half asleep and my only thought was getting to the door before it woke everyone up. I was so sleep deprived and I wasn't thinking straight. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have answered the door so late at night. As I was heading to get the door, my baby started to wake up, so I brought him with me. I opened the door and a man is standing there. I said, "How can I help you?" And he just stands there for a second and doesn't say anything. At this point, I'm starting to wake up enough to be observant, and I remember feeling like he seemed nervous, which made me really anxious. All he said was, "I'm sorry, I thought you ordered a pizza." Then, he grabbed a box off the table on the porch and then walked away. I don't remember what I even said to him. I just closed the door and stood there, feeling a bit strange thinking about how weird it was, but I told myself that he just had the wrong house. As I'm walking back to the living room, I saw the clock and my stomach dropped. It was a little after 2 a.m. There are no places around that deliver that late, and I went back to look outside, but I didn't see anyone, and there were no cars on the street. I made sure that all the doors were locked, and I just remember sitting there, a little shaken, thinking about how off the situation felt. 1. Normally, a pizza guy just says hi and tells you how much you owe. All he said was "I'm sorry" and that he thought that I ordered a pizza. Number 2, the box was not with him. I didn't see it until he grabbed it off the table as he exited my porch. The table is a few feet away from the door, and if he was holding it, I probably wouldn't have asked how I could help him. I would have said wrong house or something. Number 3, I don't remember him wearing anything associated with a pizza place or a name tag. The only place nearby was a Pizza Hut. This was around March or April, so it's possible that he had a jacket on, but I really don't remember. And number 4, nothing was open that late, and I am sure about that. The nervous vibe that I got still tells me that something was off. What was he doing? And if he had bad intentions, I think either he saw that I had dogs or the baby changed his mind. Whenever I think about this, I get chills, and I feel lucky that nothing happened that night. Story by you/Pranky but Saintly. I believe it started late last night. I was playing games on my laptop while my roommates, Mandy and Carl, had already been sleeping for a while. Around 2:30 a.m., Mandy walked out to the living room to tell me that she was having trouble sleeping and asked me if I would like to watch a movie with her. I accepted her offer and we began our late-night movie watching. Suddenly, about 30 minutes into the movie, her dog started barking profusely, looking at the front door and the window next to it. Despite lasting only a couple minutes, it raised concerns for both of us. The dog has never been one to bark at random things or things that are harmless. He was definitely trying to alert us to something, and whatever it was likely serious. We paused the movie briefly to hear if there were any strange sounds or movements, but didn't hear anything, so we continued watching. 2 separate instances of this reoccurred during the rest of the movie, but we were never able to determine what the dog was reacting to. The rest of the night and morning seemingly went off without further incident. I went to bed to get a quick nap in before work, then left the house a little while later. When I got home, however, it was a different story. Between work and running errands afterwards, I didn't arrive back at the house until about 5:30 p.m. that evening. The first unusual thing that I noticed was that while I was unlocking the door, Mandy and Carl hastily came and opened it, and I briefly saw fear in their faces before they realized that it was me. I further reassured them with a greeting of, "Hi, just me," and they looked even more relieved. I then noticed that Carl was on the phone and was speaking in a very serious tone. Between all of this, I immediately knew something strange was going on, and I wondered what was up. Mandy sensed this and assured me that she and Carl would explain everything as soon as he got off the phone. Luckily, this was just a few minutes later. They started off by asking me if I was expecting any packages, or if I was getting a package delivered to the home on behalf of a friend. I told them that I had not ordered anything recently, nor was I accepting any packages on anyone's behalf. They told me that when they got home, which was less than an hour before I had, they found a package in front of the house. Upon inspection of the package, there were immediate red flags. Firstly, the alleged recipient on the label was a name that did not belong to any of us, nor anyone we knew. On top of that, it sounded fake and generic. Secondly, it also came with a phone number for the supposed intended recipient, but they attempted to call that number, and it was not in service. The package was also labeled with a company name and a list of products that were supposedly the contents. Before opening it up, they decided to look up the company name. There was no such company. Finding all this more suspicious than ever, they finally opened up the package to inspect the contents. There were no sweaters or washcloths. Instead, multiple bags of weed, all vacuum bagged, thousands of dollars worth. This was when they immediately called the police, who then came and took down all the info they could give them, and then took away the package for evidence in the investigation. The phone call that Carl was in when I got home was a follow-up call from them. I was floored that all this occurred so shortly before I got home. I asked them if the police suspected any of us having any part in it, and they assured me that they didn't, and that we weren't in any trouble, and that they knew that I would never take part in any such thing. Despite this all being a lot to take in, I was still ready to fall over dead from working the morning shift and traveling to multiple places for my errands. So, I went to my room for another nap and managed to drift off relatively quickly. Around 2 hours later, however, I was suddenly awakened by Carl calling my name. Mandy and Carl would never disrupt my rest without good reason, so even in my half-asleep and jolted from slumber state, I registered that whatever he had to tell me must be important. I blinked myself awake, looked at him and yawned out. "Yeah?" He told me that a gold SUV had just pulled up to the house for a couple seconds and sped off after noticing that the house was occupied. According to him, they even blew right through a stop sign at the end of the street. That was undoubtedly the intended recipient of the drug package, and they quickly noticed that not only was the house occupied, but their package was no longer there. There's a few different possibilities here. One is that the person who dropped the package off delivered to the wrong address. Another is that they mistakenly believed that our house was unoccupied and thus choose our address as a drop-off location. This is plausible because none of us own a car, so when our lights are off or dimmed at night, our house could believably appear unoccupied. Last but not the least is the craziest possibility of them all. As I mentioned at the beginning of this post, there's a chance that this incident could be connected to the previous home invasion incidents. If that's the case, my guess would be that people behind those incidents are escalating their vendetta against Mandy and Carl by attempting to get them incriminated on contrived evidence. In fact, they mentioned that they were grateful to get the officer they did, because several other cops in our town has disbelieved and dismissed them in past incidents. Whatever the backstory of this incident may be, I am hoping that we don't become a target for violence by those behind it. Story by you/No, those are beans. I'm a 22-year-old female, a shipped shopper, and mostly work nights because that's when most orders are available. And I generally only accept orders in the zone closest to my home. One night, I decided that I wanted to do one last order with a delivery window between 10 and 11. But there weren't any available in my usual zone, so I figured that I'd just pick one up from the other side of town to close out my day. During my shop, there were lots of things on this customer's list that were really out of stock, and he had specified on his account that he would like to be contacted in that situation. I was shopping for him for about 30 to 40 minutes and sent him probably 10 different texts about things that needed substitutes. But I did not receive an answer until I was ready to check out. I had reached out to him one last time, letting him know that that's what was happening. He finally told me to just use my best judgment, to which I replied, no problem. Fast forward to having all his items bagged and in my car, I sent him a text letting him know that I'm headed his way and that I'd be there in about 15 minutes, as I do for all of my customers. I got to his street, and it already isn't the best part of town, which I didn't know before I accepted the order, because I hadn't been over that way since I've lived where I do now. And I'm thinking, okay, no problem, just make it a quick drop-off and get back home. When I get to the house, the driveway is completely on the left side of the house, and there is a porch only on the right corner that leads to the front door. So, I can't see the door from the driveway, and nobody could see that I was in the driveway if they were at the door. I can see that there are multiple porch lights, as well as lights around the house leading up to the door. But none of them are turned on. Now, mind you, I have told this person that I was on my way, gave him my estimated timeline, and pressed a button in the app to notify him that I had arrived. At this point, I am feeling a knot in my stomach and my hair is standing up a little bit. Before I got out of my car, I sent a text to my boyfriend, whom I live with, telling him that I was feeling really uncomfortable about the situation and that the house was creeping me out, and if he didn't hear from me telling him that I was on my way home, then something is wrong. The person ordered a lot of stuff and it was just me doing the delivery, so it took me 3 separate trips to the porch and back to my car to get everything out. I grabbed as much as I could for the first trip, went to the porch to set the groceries by the door, and went back to my car for the next load without knocking and making minimal noise. When I got to the porch to drop off my second load, I got up to the second step before looking up to make sure that I could see where I was going in the dark, and realized that the front door was now open and there is a man standing there staring at me. He also didn't turn any lights on in his house aside from what looked like a single light fixture 3 rooms away. So there was just a faint back glow behind him, and I could only see his silhouette. None of his face or even what he was wearing. Shocked, I just blurted out, "Hello, how are you?" And he stood there and said nothing. He didn't reach for the bags and just looked at me. I dropped his bags off, went back to my car to get the last of the groceries, and didn't even make it up all the porch steps before dropping his groceries and turning around to run back to my car because he was still just standing in the doorway looking at me. I didn't get tipped on that order, but I'd like to consider the fact that I made it home that night as my tip. Needless to say, I haven't shopped in that area again since. Story by you/Chocolate Chip Wizard. This happened a long time ago in the early 70s on the rural outskirts of a small satellite town of Detroit. Back in those days, kids wandered freely and more or less without knowledge or fear of the dangers every child knows about these days. Stranger danger was not a thing kids at that time were taught in school. I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, a nearsighted, neglected girl, child of parents who were too immersed in their own misery to bother with parenting. So, while I knew firsthand about how dangerous family could be, I had no fear of strangers. I was walking home from the bus stop, and I remember it was a warm, pleasant and sunny day. The road was a dirt one, solely residential, and the houses were all situated below the crown of a hill, out of sight from the road. I was about a city block from my home when a brown truck pulled up, looking, to my poor vision at least, like a UPS delivery man. Inside the truck, I could see 3 people. One was a girl in her 20s with long straight blonde hair who very much resembled my older sister, or the girl on Mod Squad, a common look in those days. There was a young man with a kind of dirty, bearded Jesus look that was just as common at that time. And the third, I think, was kind of shadowed, hard to make out in the interior of the truck. One of them said, "We have a package for your parents. Get in, show us where your house is." Though I had no fear for strangers at that time, I was a logical little cuss. When I did interact with adults, I usually annoyed them by just saying like it was. So I answered, "My parents' house is right there," pointing down the road, and then I added, "You can follow me if you want to." They tried for several minutes to persuade me to get into the delivery truck, and I just couldn't understand why these stupid adults wouldn't simply follow me a couple doors down so that they could make their delivery. I turned away from the truck and walked along the edge of the road toward my house, thinking that they would follow me and deliver their package. The van drove off. No delivery attempted. Now looking back, I realized that I don't remember seeing a UPS logo on the truck, though it was a brown delivery-style vehicle. Back in those days, surplus bread delivery vans were a dime a dozen. I also realized that there would not be 3 young people dressed in jeans in a real UPS truck. I am awfully glad that I never found out what they had planned for me that day. Story by U/Gas Representative 246. 2 days ago, I, a 38-year-old female, took delivery of a new fridge delivered to my rental unit in the lower mainland of British Columbia. I was home alone as my partner, 32 male, was still at work. 2 delivery guys show up, one, a regular guy, who stayed outside while the other, who was a complete creep, let's call him CC, came in to measure the doorways. My doors are narrow, so it took some maneuvering to get the fridges in and out of the house respectively. While CC was measuring the various apertures of my house, I noticed that he was pinching himself through the front of his pants, like he had an itch or something. So, long story short, the fridges swapped places in my kitchen, and I was left alone with CC in my kitchen, while the regular guy loaded up the old one for disposal. At this point, CC starts drawing more attention to his groin and says that he is having a problem with his penis. There was a language barrier, so I assumed that he had somehow hit himself during the fridge swap. Turns out, he was just fully aroused and walking around with tent pants while he was finishing up the install. I am now officially extremely uncomfortable, and I tend to laugh when faced with situations that make me this uncomfortable. I'm paraphrasing the conversation that followed due to the language barrier between myself and CC. I ask, "Are you okay? Did you get hit?"
Not hit, just uncomfortable.
And I note the obvious boner at this point, as I'd been trying not to look down as soon as he started pinching himself. "Oh," I gave out an uncomfortable laughter. He said,
I'm going to need some help with this, I think.
"Well, looks like you'll have to deal with that elsewhere." CC then answered,
Oh, I'd not do it here.
He then turns away from me and is obviously touching himself. I said, "Well, thanks for the delivery. Looks like we're all done here." CC said,
Maybe you could help.
I gave out an intensely uncomfortable laughter and then said, "Nah, man."
Okay, things are getting weird.
And then I told him, "Things aren't getting weird. This is weird." At which point, this complete creep leaves my house and I immediately lock the door. I told my landlord what happened, and he was aghast and followed up with a delivery company the next day. After reflection on what happened and how disturbing that behavior was, I decided to go to the RCMP to report what happened tomorrow. This guy knows where I live, but I can't stand by yet again while some creep gets away with this kind of thing. Also, who knows how many other people have dealt with this similar behavior from this specific dude? Or is it going too far to light up the business on Google, Facebook, and etc. with reviews about their pervert delivery people? And here are the top comments from my last video. Welcome to Miss Creepy Tales Riddle Time. If you know the answer, feel free to leave it in the comments. And the winner gets to be featured in the next video. I sleep upside down and I fly through the night. I live in dark places, and I don't have good eyesight. What am I? Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.